So let's take a moment to talk about how do you know if your shellac flakes or the shellac itself is any good. Flakes. People wonder. A lot of times you go online and you see some seller who will say, well, it's good for a few years and then get rid of it, and that's not necessarily true at all. There's a few ways that you can tell pretty definitively whether the flakes are good. I've got shellac flakes that have got to be 15 years old. They're still good. But there's 3 or 4 signs that they're not good anymore. Number one, you mix your shellac in your jar and it doesn't completely mix. You go 24 hours, you're shaking your jar periodically, maybe it gets to 36 hours, and there's just some flakes that aren't doing it. Maybe 90-95% of the flakes have dissolved, but the rest have not. That's a sign that the flakes are beginning to turn. That shellac may still be usable, and I still will use that shellac for other things around the shop, shellacking a tool handle, things like that. But I wouldn't use it in French polishing if it's starting to not dissolve. Another thing that you'll see is you'll put the shellac on a workpiece and it just doesn't appear to be drying in the way shellac normally does. And shellac dries quickly, as you'll see in my process. By the time I'm working on a guitar and I get from one end to the other end of the guitar, the beginning end is dry. If you're finding that the shellac does not appear to be properly drying, that's a good sign that the flakes have gotten old, or even that the mix that you've made has gotten old. But right now I'm talking about the flakes. The third thing that happens, and that has happened to me once, is that you will find that you mix up some shellac from some of your old flakes, and at the bottom of the jar there is this putty-like nasty substance. It's not wax. It's like a putty. It's a thick putty. Again, not a good sign. This is shellac I would not use in French polishing, but you might decide to use it for general shop purposes. So those are 3 clear signs that the shellac flakes are beginning to go bad. But if the shellac dissolves properly, if the shellac dries properly and functions as normal, those flakes are good. And I know people who've had shellac flakes for a long time. Now, mostly what I'm talking about now are de-waxed shellac flakes. Shellac with wax content, if kept in a cool, dry place, and we're assuming that you're keeping the material properly in a cool, dry place, wax content flakes can last indefinitely. They can last a very, very long time. But typically, de-waxed shellac is where we're a little bit more iffy. Same thing with button lac. A button lac with a wax content can last decades. Although it can too ultimately fail. But you're going to tend to see failures more often on the de-waxed shellac side of things. Now, what about shellac that you mixed? Typically, I just don't keep it that long. 6 months is a good rule of thumb for how long mixed shellac will last. I know people who will put their shellac in the refrigerator or even the freezer. I don't. I tend to worry about moisture, which is sort of the killer of shellac. But they say 6 months is good. Usually, I just make up enough that I'm going to use for my guitar project, and there's rarely very much more, and after 6 months or so I'll get rid of it. But again, you'll notice the same issues. If the shellac is going bad, it will not dry very well on the workpiece. You may even see that congealed putty-like stuff at the bottom. So that hopefully gives you a little bit of confidence to know that just because your shellac has, been in your shop for 5 or 6 or even 10 years or more, doesn't mean it's bad and you have to throw it out. There are ways to determine.